Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really glad to see everybody here for this new course on Chinese culture versus Western culture, cultural value orientations. When we talk about culture, we can take the metaphor, culture is like an iceberg into consideration. We know that an iceberg can appear to be beautiful and attractive above the water, but what is more influential, what is more fundamental, or even vital, could be something beneath the water. If you take Titanic into consideration, you would know what I'm talking about. Culture is the same thing. When we talk about culture, you're speaking, the first impression you would have is about something you can observe, something visible, something like food, dressing style, architecture, artwork, etc. Those are surely very important for a culture, but they are only something you can observe, something really superficial. What is more fundamental, what is more influential, could be something beneath the water, or could be something invisible in terms of the metaphor of iceberg. And those parts could be values, viewpoints, love, hatred, or maybe we can put it simply like values. In this course, due to the time limitation, we would not cover everything about culture, and we're going to focus only on the values part. So in this course, the outline for those several class periods would be like this. We are going to talk about the overview of individualism versus collectivism. And then we're going to talk about individualism in America and collectivism in China. And we're going to finish the other cultural dimensions before talking about high context culture versus low context culture. And then we're going to talk about cultural values in business environment. So in this class, we're going to talk about what is the concept of values. According to the Concepts Oxford Dictionary, values could be defined as one's principles or standards, one's judgment of what is valuable or important in life. And Hofstede once says that values are a broad tendency to prefer certain states of affairs over others. So based on these concepts, you can see that the key words about values could be principles, standards, tendency, or preference. It is about what you would think could be more favorable to think about the standards or principles in your livelihood. So when we talk about values, it could be the deepest manifestation of culture and the most difficult to be understood by an outsider. It is most important to know that cultural values guide both perception and our communication. Before talking about values more theoretically, let me just show you two cases. Make comparison between advertisements of Coca-Cola and Wang Laoji. So here are the cases. So from this, you know that cultural values could be embodied in our daily lives, for example, in advertisements. Culture can affect everything we do, and it is apparent that it also applies to advertisements or brands originated from different countries. When looking into these advertisements, we may draw some conclusions about the characteristics and differences of diverse cultures. Let's take the advertisements of Coca-Cola into consideration first. So in the first ad, as we can see that there is a cowboy, and he tried to achieve his purpose in a very unconventional way. In the ad, you can see that the cowboy worked really hard in a barren land for a while, and he might be exhausted. And then he got a bottle of Coke from a cooler out of nowhere, and then he used a dried branch from the sand to set up a fire. And when the fire had some smoke, and the smoke stimulated the smoke detector in the heaven, and then there was a heavy rain pouring down, which helped the cowboy to enjoy his coolness both inside with the Coke and outside with the heavy rain. So from this, we can see that this ad is really very innovative. Okay, well, it's talking about how a guy is trying by all means to use his own methods to make a change and try to achieve something by his own efforts and by his own innovation. And in the second ad, we can see that the small guy, the short guy, really suffered a lot from his shortness. At the beginning of the ad, we didn't really know what's happening, what's going on. He was running really fast and jumped to the wall and trying to fetch something. And he set up a bar actually on the wall in a dark room. And we didn't know what's going on until we saw the same guy in an elevator together with some big guys. And then he got into his own office. And again, he was running really fast and jumped really high. And he just got a bottle of Coke from the vending machine. And suddenly we realized that, okay, well, the little guy was trying to just through his own efforts, through his own hundreds of times of practices, trying to get a bottle of Coke. And at this moment, we could be really moved by the self-reliance of the short guy. And he is really confident. He is really self-reliant. And he actually, the easiest way to solve the problem is just to go ahead and ask somebody else to give a favor, to just get a bottle of Coke for him. However, he didn't do that. He just tried to achieve this purpose through his own practices. So this is the second ad, and we could be really moved by the self-reliance of the guy, and his self-dignity really deserves everybody's respect. And in the third advertisement, we can see that a guy put a coin into the vending machine, and then a bottle of Coke went through a very fantastic, magic kind of journey. And just after this ad, we can be very much attracted by the imagination, by the innovation of this ad. And maybe everybody would be like that guy in that ad to be attracted by this advertisement to a bottle of Coke, just to enjoy what could be experienced by the Coke in the vending machine. So now let's just come back and take a look at the advertisement of Wang Laoji.
健康家庭永远相伴，王老吉。
看年货买王老吉，黄货齐下。过年回家的王老吉，如意吉祥。拜年好礼王老吉，体面吉祥。过大年喝王老吉，美满吉祥。
过吉祥年喝王老吉，王老吉凉茶。
不用担心生活，尽情 享受生活，爬上我和王老吉，不用担心什么，尽情享受生活，爬上我和王老吉。爬上火和王老吉，
爬上火和王老吉。
And you can see in the first ad of Wang Laoji, there was a cute toddler. Okay, he was trying by all means to get a bottle of Wang Laoji from the refrigerator. His family members looked at him lovingly, but they didn't give him a helping hand. And the little guy was, well, somewhat frustrated at the beginning, but, well, he tried to get the bottle of Wang Laoji by himself by the end of the show. So in the show, you can see a happy family. And you can see that it is emphasizing on 健康家庭永远相伴. So family is highlighted in this ad. Okay, as you know that the happy family in the video is what most of the Chinese people really aspire. For Chinese, family always comes first. And so does the health of every family member. Thus, picturing a happy family could attract potential customers who put much emphasis on their family. So this is the first ad of Wang Laoji. In the second ad, everybody could be really familiar with this ad. You can see that the video pictures scenes about Chinese gathering together during the Spring Festival. It creates a harmonious atmosphere throughout the video and stresses that Wang Laoji can bring happiness, fortune, and respect from others. And all these really are very important in Chinese society. And in the third ad, you can see that, again, there were a crowd of people enjoying Wang Laoji together. And in this ad, well, a slogan is repeatedly mentioned. That is, 爬上火喝王老吉, means take a Wang Laoji to reduce internal heat. As we know that for thousands of years, Chinese stress the importance of inner balance. Wang Laoji makes good use of this concept and meets the consumer's demands in this way. And so this is a very good appeal to the potential consumers' cultural expectation. And secondly, in the show, as we have just mentioned, it also stresses the harmonious relationship among colleagues, friends, and family members. And you can see this crowd of people getting together again in this ad. Another one, actually, it is not in the, well, in the video, but you can see the most recent advertisement of Wang Laoji made a different appeal. And you can see from this picture that it is stressing that Wang Laoji is the most authoritative one because it has a long history. It has more than 86 years of history. So this ad is trying to emphasize on the authoritative and the authentic part of this product. As you know, in China, authority and hierarchy is highly emphasized. And this ad actually is using this to attract the attention of potential consumers. So after seeing all these ads, maybe you have already drawn some conclusion about the cultural patterns or maybe cultural differences of those two brands. They represent two cultural backgrounds. One, as you know, Coca-Cola is from America. Okay, one of the most popular beverage in America and also actually in China as well. And Wang Laoji actually is one of the most popular beverages in China in recent years. And their ways of marketing could be quite different. Okay, and as we know that, usually speaking, advertisements could be very condensed. We can see that it is a window or it is a miniature of cultural values. Because in advertisements, people really want to just attract the consumers by telling something catered for their taste. And if it is something about your taste, it is not only about the product itself, but also about what the consumers truly need or want. So on this level, actually, it is something relevant to social, cultural beliefs as well. So it could be a reflection of cultural beliefs. So for Westerners, let's take Coca-Cola as an example to represent the Western cultural beliefs. It could be about something like individualism, which we will elaborate later on. But in the shows, you can see that it talks about desire for change, talks about risk-taking. For example, the guy stimulates the smoke detector, okay, which is a great endeavor to take some risk just to achieve some personal purpose. And it could be about confidence, self-confidence. And you can see in the cowboy's facial expression that he is very confident about himself. And in the small guy in the second show, you can see that he is quite confident about his own capability to achieve his own purpose as well. And it's also about self-reliance and about equality. For example, in the small guy, he didn't really want to show that he is inferior to the others. He wants to achieve this equality through his own practices. And in this third show, we can see that it is highly emphasizing on innovation. This is in the Western advertisements. And what can be reflected in the Chinese advertisements? From this, actually, we can see something to get a taste of collectivism. And you can see that in these advertisements, you see family, very, very strong emphasis on family relationship. And you can see harmonious relationship between colleagues and friends. And you can see relationship is really important in the shows, and cooperation, and maybe some inner balance about our Chinese understanding about health, about longevity. And it is also about authority, especially in the last ad. So from this advertisements, we can just, get some understanding about cultural differences, even without knowing something about the theories. And then let's come back into, begin to think and talk about values more theoretically. And what we need to know is that there are different approaches in SEC studies, in intercultural communication studies, on values. There could be value approach, perceptual approach, discourse approach, pragmatic approach, and the psychological approach. In this course, we are going to focus on the value approach. So we are going to begin with Hofstede-Bond value dimensions. Hofstede is really famous for his 4 cultural dimensions in terms of individualism versus collectivism, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity versus femininity. And the 5th cultural dimension actually is from another scholar. His name is Bond. And we're going to introduce these value orientations one by one. So before talking about those value orientations, let's talk about Hofstede very briefly, okay? Introduce this author or the scholar very briefly. Hofstede is a Dutch interculturalist. Somebody would call him a social psychologist. He is the author of 2 seminal books. And one is Culture as Culture's Consequences, International Difference in Work-Related Values. And the work is based on his study and turns out to be the most referenced SEC work of all time. And pay attention, when I talk about ICC, I mean intercultural communication. And his study is based on 116,000 respondents to a questionnaire. And the questionnaire was distributed to, to more than 40 countries and regions. And the first survey was done in 1968, and the second one was done in 1972. And the participants in the study were all managers from IBM. So this is a very large-scale study with so many participants. And that's pretty much why its conclusions could be so informative even up to now. So the first cultural orientation is about individualism, collectivism. Individualism indicates the extent to which a society is a loosely knit social framework in which people is supposed to take care of only of themselves and their immediate families. Here, let's just pay attention. Individualism is about taking care of themselves and their immediate family members. it is not just about oneself. And individualism is different from egoism. It is totally different from selfishness or egoism. And we're going to give some further examples later on. And we're going to give further explanation about what is individualism in greater detail. And there is more emphasis in individualism on I than on we, as we can see from this picture. I is highlighted in individualistic society. And according to Hofstad's study, the most individualistic countries could be the US. US actually is ranked #1 in terms of individualism, and followed by Australia, Great Britain, Canada, and the Netherlands. As we can see, these countries, we can say that they all belong to Western cultural category. Okay, especially for the first 4 ones, they are all Anglo-Saxon cultures or English-speaking countries. And so there is a pattern here. And for individualistic society, they tend to be Euro-American societies. Introduce the concept first before elaborations with examples. So let's take a look at the concept of collectivism. Collectivism emphasizes the common interests, conformity, cooperation, and interdependence. So the key words for the concept, let's see the key words again, could be common interests, conformity, cooperation, and interdependence. So have you seen these pictures before? Yeah, okay, these pictures were taken during the 2008 Olympic Games opening ceremony. And this picture, especially the first one, was very famous because it is a performance on 击否儿歌, okay, during the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in China, in Beijing. And you can see that, well, this one, if you can have a vivid memory of that show, you can see that it is really very, very thrilling. And many Western newspapers or mass media, they have talked about this show, saying that the thunder sound of this performance just remind the Western countries about the awakening of the Oriental lion. And this performance is so, let's say, impressive. It could be due to the collectivistic contribution of more than 2,000 participants. Actually, there were altogether 2,008 participants in the show. And they just perform and they just stroke the drums with exactly the same movement, exactly the same actions, and with exactly the same sound. And so this show could be a very good example to just show the collectivism contribution to the common interest, because those people, they really want to just show the best part of China in front of the world international audience. According to the director of the show, Zhang Yimou, okay, during one of the interviews about this show, Zhang Yimou said that the success of this opening ceremony could be due to the cultural influence of China. Okay, well, it is both the demonstration of cultural characteristics, and it is due to the cultural characteristics can we just have such a marvelous show in front of the audience. Because all the thousands of participants of this show, they were just ready to contribute to the success of the show, and they practiced and rehearsed for more than 10 months. And actually, they didn't receive too much payment, get a lot of income for this, but they are very much ready to contribute for the common interest. And they are very much ready to show the uniformity and to show the cooperation, a very good cooperation in front of the audience. And this could hardly be achieved according to Zhang Yimou, in some other countries, well, and it would be very much relevant to our collectivistic society. And when we talk about collectivism, some international students on this campus, they would show some doubts. I have heard such kind of comments quite frequently from international students and even some international scholars that, okay, they just don't really think that China is that much collectivistic anymore. They would think that China is becoming more individualistic, okay? And frequently they would raise this as an example. When we see this picture, you can see that when queuing for Westerners, they tend to wait in line. However, for Chinese, we tend to cluster together, okay, well, as a crowd in front of the window, for example. And this, to the Westerners' observation, is definitely not collectivistic, okay, because people is thinking about their own benefit. They are not really thinking about the individual benefit of the other persons. So they are saying that actually this could be an example to show that the Chinese are not that collectivistic anymore. So how can we understand this? And that actually would lead to how do you understand what is collectivism? Is collectivism altruism? No, the answer is negative. When we talk about collectivism as a concept, we need to take another pair of concepts into consideration. That is about in-group versus out-group. It indicates that in terms of in-group, it indicates a tight social framework in which people distinguish between in-groups and out-groups and expect their in-group members to look after them. And that is very important for the concept of collectivism. So in-group includes your immediate family, your extended family, your relatives, your acquaintances, your friends, your classmates, your colleagues, etc. Means that the people you regard as part of your group, your in-group members, refers to people could be regarded as part of your group, those who are close to you, who have a closest relationship with you. Versus out-group refers to people who are basically strangers, who only have business relationship with you, and who are not close to you. For collectivism, usually speaking, you would feel obligated to show your harmonious relationship and to maintain this harmonious relationship within the group, among the in-group members. But you don't really think it is really that much important for you to maintain such kind of harmonious relationship with out-group members. Okay, so let's just take Fei Xiaotong's theory or explanation into consideration when we think about what is in-group and what is out-group. According to Fei Xiaotong, in his concept about 差序格局, I would just quote him in Chinese first before translation about this. He was talking about the Chinese relationship in Chinese. 中文上他是这样讲的，说这个中国人的这种人际关系就像一个差序格局，以己为中心，像石子一般投入水中，和别人所联系成的社会关系，不像团体中的分子一般，大家立在一个平面上的，而是像水的波纹一般，一圈圈的推出去，愈推愈远，也愈推愈薄。And so this is a description about the relationship of Chinese relationship. And so this concept is about, well, it's like a metaphor talking about a personal relationship in China. It's like throwing a stone into the water. And you, as the core part, could be like the stone, and you could be at the center of the circle. And when the water fades away, you can see different circles of the water. And it could be similar, like the relationship between you and the others. And for in-group members, it is similar like the water. You can have inner in-group members, which is closer to you. The circle is closer to you. And you can have outer in-group members. Means that the circle could be just a little bit farther away from you. However, those are still your in-group members, and you still need to think about the harmonious relationship between you and the in-group members. However, once the water, just the circles fade away, you don't feel the in-group relationship anymore. You don't feel the obligation to just have this collectivistic power to join you together. And that is about in-group versus out-group. And with this as an example, you may understand why Chinese, okay, when we are queuing, we tend to cluster together. Because when you are clustered together, usually speaking, the people around you may or may not be your in-group members. And you don't really feel the obligation to just show the collectivistic relationship to the strangers around you. And that could be one of the reasons, okay? Well, so this is about collectivism. So for collectivistic society, the lifestyle is not like a single person, okay? Or it is not highlighting the individual stance of one person. It is more about we identity. It's more about, okay, people getting together in a group and to get mutual benefits and to get obligations to help each other. Okay, so in collectivistic society, people tend to depend on each other in a group. Okay, in such kind of society, well, maybe let's just try to remind us of Dante's quote, Dante's saying. He says that go your own way, let others talk. Okay, which is a very powerful sentence. But do you think it is feasible in Chinese society? Can we really do that in China? Okay, as we know that in Chinese society, because of the close relationship between people, in-group members, you can hardly do whatever you want to do because you need to take the others' benefits, the others' concerns into consideration. And if you take a look at this figure, this picture, you can see that for interpersonal relationship, for the Western society, they do have their own social network as well, but the network is quite much more simpler, let's just put it in this way, much more simpler. Versus for Chinese interpersonal relationship, you can see that the relationship is much more complicated. Okay, that could be one of the reasons for Chinese to really care about the harmonious relationship between you and your in-group members. Maybe from your childhood on, your parents have told you that don't offend the others, because when you offend one person, you can hardly tell who else you're going to offend because of the complicated and sophisticated interpersonal relationship. And so for Chinese, we tend to have long-term, involuntary, and more intensive relationships. So just to wrap up this section, okay, from the above analysis, we can see that, okay, China versus America could belong to different cultural groups. From this figure, you can see that America, in terms of individualism index, according to Hofstad's study, its index is 91, versus China, for individualism index, we are located only at 20. Means that we are very collectivistic society, collectivistic-oriented society, versus America could be ranked number 1 in terms of individualism. That's what we talk about in today's class. And the next class, we're going to talk about why individualism is ranked number 1 in the US. And how come individualism could be so distinct in that society? Let's call it a day. Thank you.